Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. Today I want to talk about the GMT. The GMT, or Greenwich Mean Time function, is without doubt my favourite complication, and it's one of the themes of my collection. It's one of the types of watch I specifically collect. But what's one thing that's very important to realise is that the GMT function can be implemented quite differently in different watches, and how that function's implemented can really affect its usefulness for you. The first thing I want to do is be really clear over what I mean by a GMT watch, and so what I'm going to be talking about. And what to me this means is a fourth hand which independently tracks a second time zone. That this time zone will be in 24-hour or military time, and therefore I'm not including watches that have just got like a separate 12-hour bezel which rotates. I'm not counting world timers. I'm not counting watches that have like a 12-hour duo time or home timer function. These are perfectly good watches, and I do also have a few of these. However, they're not the topic. They're not the topic of today's conversation. Now, this might sound strange because most people will know what they want to watch for, but for a GMT, it's particularly important to really think first about what do I want this watch for and how am I going to use it. So you need to have, for example, a really clear idea of which hands are you going to use for which time zones, because you've got two options. 90% of the time, the most important time to you is your local time zone, where you are now. And so normally, certainly and I think most people would set the main hands, the normal minute and hour hand, to the local time, to where they are in the world. Using the main hand, it's so much easier to see the detail on the here and the now, both for minutes and for the date, at a quick glance. And that's not what you want to see. Secondly, when you're at home, you're surrounded by cues as to whether it's morning or night. So you can survive quite comfortably on just having the 12-hour zone. Most people will use the GMT for the other time zone. And the first reason for that is generally when you're checking the time in another time zone where someone else is, whether that's at home or whether someone else is traveling, that's quite a deliberate thing. You're not doing it at a glance. And so the fact that you have to slow down for a second and look at the dedicated GMT hand is no big deal because you're not doing this quickly. The second thing is quite often we lose track of whether it's AM or PM in this other zone. We'll remember very briefly that somewhere might be 3 hours behind or 3 hours in front, but quite often sort of a shortcut that we've used, it's actually not 3 hours, it might be 15 hours. And so it's easy to lose track of where the other place is in terms of AM and PM hours. By using the 24-hour timer that way, you get instantly told, don't ring them now. Yes, it's 3, but it's 3 in the morning. So I found the best way of using a GMT is when you've decided you're going to travel, you set both the GMT and local to the correct time at where you are right now, and then you adjust on the go. So what we're going to talk about now is how do we do those adjustments on the fly. The first thing to be clear about is what I mean by crown positions. I'm going to use the terminology of normal position, first position, second position. Normal position is where we wind the watch. First position would be where normally you would have the date quickset. Second position is where you adjust the main hands. So with that language in mind, every GMT I've ever encountered uses the second position to change the main hand and the GMT hands simultaneously. Beyond that though, there are two distinctly different options. The first I'm going to call first position GMT hand, and that is when moving the crown to the first position and then moving the crown, you change the GMT hand. The second option is what I call the first position main hand option, and that is when you move the crown to the first position and then rotate the crown, it changes the main hand position. Both implementations work, however, each implementation is better suited to a different use. The first position GMT hand implementation is best for when you are staying at home and you're tracking someone else moving, and that way the local time doesn't change as you adjust the time. Only the GMT hand does, and you're easily able to track another person moving. The alternative of first position main hand move is best suited for when you are moving, and so you want to adjust local time quickly, but you want to keep the GMT locked to the home base that hasn't moved. It's not the end of the world if you've got a particular GMT implementation that doesn't match how you're going to use the watch. It simply means you're going to be stuck with a lot extra faffing about of moving the local time and then the GMT, or moving the GMT and then the local time every time you adjust, unless the implementation of the GMT matches how you intend to use it. There is one other quirk to how you do you set your GMT hand, and that's when you're talking about Rolex. In all of my GMTs, when you move the crown to the first position, it does two things. If you turn it one way, it'll either move the GMT or main hour hand, so you can change time zones. The other thing it will do is it'll have a date quick set if you turn the crown the other way. Now, in my experience, Rolex is set up a little bit differently. Certainly, I think it's with their Explorer, which I've used. First position of the crown only moves the main hour hand for resetting the time. So the good part is you can move the hour hand backwards and forwards, which is great if you're traveling. But on the other hand, you just lost your date quick set. And so really then all you have to do to change the date is do the shuffle. I think it's between 10 and 2, backwards and forwards. It's not the end of the world, but it's a bit of a pain. So, super summary, GMT is a super useful function, can't recommend it highly enough, and it's something I deliberately seek out to collect. It is implemented differently, and what method you use, and therefore which method is best, which watch is best for you, really depends on how you want to use it. Are you traveling, or are you tracking someone else that travels? If you're traveling, you want the first position to move the main hour hand. If you're tracking other people in other time zones, then you want the first position on the crown to track the GMT, because that's the one you want to be able to change easily. That's really it. That's what I just wanted to get across. I hope this helped in understanding the GMT function a little bit better, and kind of understanding some of the commentary you might hear about why some people do or don't like the way some watches work. If this helped, please subscribe, and even better, like this video. There's lots of other content on the channel. Lots to see. Please subscribe, and I'll see you later. Thanks.